So once again, I'd like to thank you for joining me on my podcast. So for the
Thank you for
first
having me.
part, can you please introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, I'm Dan Buckley. I'm an actor living and working in the UK. I performed in many sectors within the performing arts world. So whether that be plays, musicals in the West End, regionally, internationally, I've worked in Australia, Hong Kong, um, and Canada, and feel very blessed and lucky that I've been able to do that. Um, yeah, and I just started making silly videos on the internet, and people are seeing them, and I feel like it's hopefully going to go hand in hand with the trajectory I want to go on.
That's great. And so, what made you want to become an actor?
I never really had a eureka moment. I don't ever remember there being a time where I I sat up and I thought, that's the job I want to do. I was just always very theatrical. I was always very performative. I was always putting on shows for my family. I was always, doing choreography to steps or whatever pop band was around at the time. And I just remember always being theatrical, very stagey, and loving it. And, that led to me doing amateur dramatics, and then I would from amateur dramatics, I would then do little competitions or I would do lots of things. And I like to describe my life as a sort of series of doors that just sort of opened. I didn't really have anyone who was pushing me in any direction. And I don't ever really remember either being like, I must do this, I have to do this. I just always was. I must have just sort of kept saying to my family, I want to do that now. And they were like, okay. And so I ended up going to college a year early because my high school didn't have the course I wanted to do. They didn't do drama, so I didn't actually have an education in theatre studies or drama until I went to college. That's when I started to take it seriously, and then from then I sort of went to another um, institution where I trained, and then I went to an accredited drama school where I trained for 3 years, and since then I graduated and I worked solidly for about 10 years and the pandemic happened and then nobody did anything for a bit, but I was lucky to sort of still be doing little projects throughout that time. And then when some of the restrictions were lifted over here, I was lucky to do one of the first shows to open and um, yeah, and have that experience of creating a role again. Yeah, so that's sort of how I really got into it. No real eureka moment, just sort of happened.
That's amazing. And so, I understand you have a good following on social media. Can you please explain a little bit about how you started doing the fans at stage or the types of people in theater audience videos?
Yeah, well, when I started my career, I was always playing funny characters, comedy. People knew me as a funny guy, as a comedy actor, but outside of that, I was actually quite serious, and I was quite I was very different to playing those outlandish roles, and I was never the person in the middle of the room getting all the attention. I was actually quite a wallflower, and um, I, I found myself slowly gravitating towards more serious roles and roles that required me not to be funny, or if they were, it's quite performative in a way that the audience knew they could see through it, and and I guess I kind of missed it. I guess I kind of missed making people laugh, and so. I used to have social media before the pandemic. I liked the pandemic, pre-pandemic me and the post-pandemic me, two different people. And so that version of me is gone, and with it went social media that I had then. And this time, I started a new account on social media where I would, really started on TikTok because that's what TikTok's for, right? It's for quick, funny, creative stuff. And so I started posting funny videos on there, and then it moved over to Instagram, where it actually has had more of a dedicated sort of pull. And and the reason I did it is because I think I miss making people laugh, and I had all these sort of like archetypes in my head, and yeah, I just sort of ran with it. I ran with it, and people really enjoyed them. And do you know what? It's my peers. It's the people that are within my sphere, my world, that enjoy it, and that's what makes me happy. I feel like if you're just putting your stuff out there that's quite niche to a plethora of people, a whole bunch of people who aren't really interested in theatre. then the feedback for me is not going to be the same. Even if it does well, I feel like it's not the same. But when I have my peers, when I have like people I respect, composers, directors, actors, messaging me or commenting saying this is accurate or this is so great, it really fulfills that part of me that's like, ah, okay, no, I'm good at what I do, and I'm happy to entertain, and entertaining the people that I admire has been the biggest sort of takeaway from it that I've had, and equally the other side of that is why I also feel a lot of pressure now. Because to start with, I had all these ideas and I just did them and they were funny and they were great. And now I'm like, oh, I went to a period of being like, I can't make these people laugh, so I'm not going to post. And so now I'm like, I just need to let that worry go and go back and go into it again creatively and try and have a schedule and try and, you know, have a business head about it if I can.
That's amazing. And so I understand you've been an actor for a while now. Is there a certain role that stands out to you that is like one of your favorite roles that you've played throughout your time as an actor?
Do you know what? There are lots of different roles that have importance to me for different reasons. So like my West End debut, for example, that was brilliant. I've always been very lucky that a lot of the roles that I've played, I've created from the ground up, and I feel that that's a very specific experience that not a lot of actors get, and so I'm very grateful for that. But what a role that my West End debut, I created that role, which was great. Then you have the being in a show that everyone's talking about and it's so hyped up and it's huge impact, and that was the Book of Mormon, and that dovetailed perfectly into that, and I went straight onto that, and that was just a wild experience in terms of the exposure and the idea that everyone wanted to know what it was like to be in that show. And then I've got, I did a bit of a cult show over here, called Eugenius, where I played a role that was like so outlandish and confident and great, and it really helped me grow my confidence as a performer, but also it allowed me to establish a connection with an audience that I'd never had before, where I would really get to know the fans of that show and what that character meant to them and how important it was, and the pleasure I took from that was really something I'd never felt before. But creatively, I played a role in a play um, called Dead Simple, which was about a guy, a boy, a man, a young man who had the mental capacity of a child. And so he had extreme LD learning difficulties, and he was really the antagonist in the play in a lot of ways because it relied on him being able to communicate properly and he couldn't do it. And he had all this power and he wasn't aware of it. And so for the audience, it was incredibly frustrating to watch it and be like, can't you tell what's happening here? Um, so I think as an actor, I'd love to revisit that part and to do that again. Um, yeah, I feel like there's lots of different. I could speak for hours on all the different shows I've done, but those examples I've given you are particular poignant moments for me. My most recent role I played was great because it was essentially an acting role in a play with music, and it felt great to be able to not have to worry about singing, not worrying about my voice, holding out and all that stuff. So, there's lots of there's something you can take from every single job you do. Like there's always some amazing experience or educational experience you can have in every job you do.
That's awesome. And so, if I'm not mistaken, you were in Usher's the musical, correct? Like, is that one of your
Yes,
original?
yes.
Can you please explain a little bit about your time with Usher's the musical?
Yeah, it was straight off the back of doing Book of Mormon. I went into the audition and I got the offer on the same day. And I think they were quite excited to have me on board because, like I said before, about the Mormon thing. And, again, I was coming out of doing this big comedy show and it was one of the more dramatic roles within the piece. So it appealed to me because I was like, oh, great, I get to be a little bit more serious and I get to show off my voice a little bit differently and I get to do all that stuff. And it was a real do you know what? It was so much fun. It was camp. It still is camp, and it's silly. And for all of its shortcomings, there were a lot of things that we got as a cast that really made it worthwhile. The bond we had as a group, the response from the audiences, the interaction we had to sort of kind of do front of house duties. We had to like tear tickets and we had to do all that stuff that felt really nice because then you would get that moment to go on stage and have an in joke, and it was all very much an in joke, and it was nice, like I was saying before about my peers, and entertaining your peers is always really important. And a lot of the audience were my peers. They were creatives within the industry because it was so stagey and it was so niche that those were all coming and they were just having a laugh. And it was really nice to be, contributing to their entertainment in that way.
That's amazing. And so, this next question is gonna be on two parts.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to your 15-year-old self?
Oh, my 15-year-old self. Right now, we're going to get deep. Can I get deep?
Yeah,
Advice my 15-year-old self would be don't keep secrets, tell your truth, because it will allow you to be a better person. It will stop you from hurting other people and it'll make you a better actor. Um, I would also say pursue your dreams because you're worth it and people will like you. That's what I would say.
that's amazing. And so this next part is what advice would you give to younger people who want to become actors or actresses?
I'd say you really have to know you want to do it and commit to that. It's a very interesting one because I come at whenever I ask this question, I come at it from a place of like wanting to protect people from the potential hurdles they may come up against. I've been very lucky. I've always described my career as like always having a carrot dangling in front of me. I've always had something to chase. But there are so many people out there who work so hard till they get to a point where they're like, great, I'm now a professional actor. Let's do this. And then that's when the first hurdle comes because it's not just as easy as getting into drama school or doing what it is you do when you do amateur dramatics or doing your classes or all that stuff. It's not as easy as because you almost pay for those opportunities and you almost, I mean, drama school is a bit different because you have to audition and get in, and that is success. But even if you don't go in that way, you sort of are putting yourself in this really vulnerable place. And I want to say to people, without sounding defeatist, if you get to a point in your career as an actor or your dream as an actor where you hit a crossroads or a fork in the road and the acting's no longer making you happy, and this other opportunity comes along which may give you a bunch of other things that acting won't right now, and those things are sensible and those things are going to work for you. Don't ever feel like you're a failure or that it's a bad thing to take the safe option, because unfortunately, there's still a lot of privilege in being able to pursue being an actor. Whether that is that you're financially stable enough to do it and work for peanuts, or do low paid jobs in order to get credits, in order to get seen, in order to get better work. But also just there's a lot of elitism within the world of theatre, and I'd say if you get to a fork in the road, don't be afraid to take the other option. You can always come back to acting if it suits you. If it doesn't, then you chose the right path anyway. Some people will just stay on the acting path because the doors keep opening, like with me. The carrot's there, they're chasing something, they're able to fulfill themselves. Make sure that you are fulfilled in so many ways. Make sure that all the facets that make you a person, find out what they are and make sure they're all fulfilled. And when they're not, do something about it. For me right now, one of my major facets is my social calendar, being social with my friends, empty. It's so empty, and so I'm doing something about it. I'm making lots of plans to see friends and do all these things to top that up so that I feel more like myself. So we're all multifaceted people, and I imagine it like a pie chart. And if you section it all up, and you have to make sure all of those things are fulfilled, not to 100%, but at least enough, and that can keep you happy and keep you on a trajectory that's going to fulfill you as well as being an actor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Okay.
And so that actually wraps up the interview. And so I'd like to thank you for joining me today.